Have you ever gone to look for a birthday cake for that special someone? You walk into the cake decorating store or the bakery and you look at the beautiful cakes and think, wow, that's a lot of money for that cake. What you don't know is that the majority of the cost comes from the professional cake decorators decorating the cake. I can show you in 3 simple steps how to decorate a cake for a lot less money if you're willing to put in the time for it. I've been cake decorating for about 7 years now, and I've taken a lot of classes from many different professionals, so I'd love to share some of my knowledge with you. The first things we're going to talk about are icing the cake, piping designs, and the borders. So there are different kinds of frostings that you can use. The first one is the American buttercream. This is the most common type of buttercream used in the United States. It's made from powdered sugar, butter, and flavorings. And you can add anything from vanilla, chocolate, raspberry, strawberry, pretty much any kind of flavoring that you like. It's really cheap to make because most people have these ingredients in their pantry already. It's pretty easy to use, but it's a little bit harder to get smooth because it has air bubbles in it, so you just have to work with this one a little bit more. Next you have fondant, which is a pliable dough that you put over frosting that you have on your cake already. This is the hardest one to use because you have to roll it out like a pizza dough and then put it on your cake. A lot of the times it breaks and has cracks in it, or you don't roll it out big enough. I know when I was first cake decorating and starting this, I would roll out the dough, the fondant, put it on the cake, and it wasn't big enough, or it had a big giant rip on it. So you have to pull it off, fix the buttercream, and start all over again. So this can be a little frustrating, and it definitely takes some practice and some time. You can buy ready-to-made fondant, but it is pretty expensive. I learned how to make fondant on my own from Carrie Biggers at Carrie's Cakes. It's super easy to do, and it's really cheap. All it takes is powdered sugar, gelatin, and glucose, which is corn syrup. The next is Italian buttercream, which is made from egg whites, granulated sugar, and butter. This is the hardest one to actually make because you have to cook the egg whites and the sugar until the sugar is melted, and then whip it into a meringue before you add your butter. It's kind of complicated because if you do not cool down your meringue enough, it will melt the butter and liquefy your frosting. This is my favorite frosting to actually use because it is really easy to get super smooth on the cake, and to me, I think it tastes the best because it's not as sweet as American buttercream. There are also other frostings like whipped cream, cream cheese frostings, and chocolate ganaches that you can use. When you're frosting your cake, you don't need to make it super smooth all the time. You can take your spatula and do little swishes or little pullouts with the frosting to make different looks for it. Next is piping designs on the cake. This can make a huge difference in the overall look of the cake. The best thing about piping designs is that it covers any mistakes. Christina Miller from the Art Institute told me that every cake has some kind of flaw, whether it's a hole or a dip or anything. So when you're piping, you just kind of cover that up and nobody knows the difference. The next thing is that it adds color. You put gel food coloring in your frosting to color it. You don't want to add liquid because this can liquefy your frosting. Next, it gives you texture and dimension when you are doing your cake. You can do any kind of piping designs, from swirls and flowers to dots and animals and different words, anything that you can think of. So just play around with it and have fun. By now your cake looks pretty good, but it's missing one final detail, which gives it the finishing touch, and that is the border. A lot of people use edible borders, from their frosting to edible pearls, but you can also use fabric ribbon to put around the bottom of your cake. There are different kinds of frosting borders that you can use. Wilton teaches probably the most common one, which is the shell border. And you'll see this when you go buy any cake from the store. You'll also see bead borders, which are used more commonly on wedding cakes. They can be added to the top or the bottom of the cake. I think the bottom of the cake is the most important part to put your border. When you're frosting your cake, sometimes there's little holes between the cake and frosting and the cake board. So if you put the border around the bottom, it finishes that off really nicely. You can also add it to the top to give it another look and dimension and texture to that. So by using these 3 simple steps, you can create this for very little money if you want to put the time into doing it. This also lets you show your creativity. You can do anything you want and just practice anything. There's no right or wrong in cake decorating, so just have fun and get going.